Hello, welcome to the Pursuit of Excellence with me, Anthony Beyrouti. Need your help real quick. If you like the videos, hit the thumbs up button right below, and please subscribe to get access to our latest interviews. Hit the subscribe button right there. Also, we'd love to hear from you about our interviews. In the comment section, tell us who you want us to interview or what you thought about the whole thing. Without further ado, enjoy the interview. We're very excited to be joined by UFV head men's basketball coach, Joe Enevoldson. Thank you very much for joining us, Joe.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you guys having me.
Gladly. So, where did you grow up, and how did the game get started to you?
It's funny because it's originally was a hockey player, but grew up in Vernon, BC. So played at Clarence Fulton in high school, and really just kind of accidentally fell in the game. I mean, again, went to a school, actually at Seton High School in grade 8 and 9. And, it was a hockey, it was a volleyball school predominantly. And so I played hockey, obviously, with some of the guys that were there, and then just kind of used basketball, kind of the seasons kind of can coexist a little bit. So started playing and just actually fell in love with it. Then we actually moved to a different schools in catchment area, so Fulton and Vernon. And Fulton was it was a bigger basketball school at the time, AA level way back when. And again, just kind of met a few people, started playing basketball with those guys, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And then obviously went on to college at UCC, was UCC, now is TRU in Kamloops, played there. And again, I think just fell in love with the game and fell in love with the ability to go off and do it on your own and have great imagination. And I think obviously Vernon summers are not a bad summer by any stretch. So spent a lot of time on the Fulton outdoor courts, and those were, I spent a lot of summer days just getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, riding my bike down to the courts and shooting until lunch, and doing it repeat all summer long when we weren't kind of vacationing. So again, it was a great avenue. I mean, took me through some tough times as well, both personally, parents splitting up, kind of in the grade 9, 10, 11 range, or 10, 11, 12 range, I guess. And, so I used it as quite an escape during that time frame as well, just to kind of get away from, the drama that's going on in your personal life. And so that's where you really felt passionate about, where I personally really fell in love and felt very passionately about the sport. Always kind of knew I was going to get into coaching. Never was a provincial team player, never was I was always going to be a role player on a college team. So kind of always knew that I still wanted to stay involved and stay in the game. And, again, sometimes the best coaches are the 12th men on the roster, because they get to see all the intricacies and they get to sit by coach. And, again, so that's how I kind of used the platform of basketball to get to where I was today.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's huge, and it's been fantastic. But let's go back to, when you got to university. The UCC was actually a very good team before they turned into Thompson.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, not a lot of people nowadays kind of remember that. But tell us a little bit of history of what it was like to play there, and obviously the campus has grown quite substantially since then. But what was that experience like?
Oh, I mean, some of my best, my best friends are from that generation of basketball, and from that team specifically, or that program specifically, I should say. It was I like to kind of jokingly refer to it as the golden era of CCAA basketball in BC. I mean, you had national team level guys. You had Randy Knorr, you had Aaron Mitchell. Those Langara teams won back-to-back national championships during my time frame. Fraser Valley was really starting to peak and actually won. I think just when I started to coach, they started to win. I think they won 3 of 5 national championships. So that was definitely the golden era. I mean, we had some pretty good teams too. We finished third, 4th, and 7th in the country during my time frame there. So we weren't terrible either. But again, it was the traditional. If you look at the JUCO model in the NCAA Division I, it was during that time frame, you had really, really good quote unquote JUCO teams who guys were transferring, Randy obviously to St. FX and winning 2 national titles there, Mitchell to Brandon and being in a national final. You had a lot of good university players, Canada West All-Stars, playing in that league during that time frame. So again, to even just sit on the bench and see some of the talent that was going through there was just an amazing time in my life, and you're surrounded by your best buds and, again, lifelong friends.
What did you graduate with?
I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Geography. And then I ended up going back to school later on, about 5, 6, 7 years ago to finish off an MBA there. I did a master's and a graduate certificate in business.
Fantastic. So where'd you get your MBA from?
Thompson Rivers as well. So
what drew a lot of people that don't really, when they're in high school, they don't really get what an MBA is. Give me an example of the reasons why you chose to go get an MBA. It's obviously, in our business, it's very important to have some people with some knowledge. Yeah. That's a big deal. So what kind of drew you to that, and what was it like?
Well, I think, again, my mentor, Coach Ken Olenek, I sat down with him. I was looking at going back to school and doing my master's degree. It was always kind of something that I wanted to finish, or I wanted to start and finish, I should say. So I, in talking with Ken, Ken Olenek, Kelly's dad, obviously, but he was kind of, he was in sport admin. Lifelong goal was to be an athletic director at a university. And he kind of led me, hey, if you don't want to necessarily be in the education or be a vice principal or a principal, but you want to be in the college university setting, definitely go get an MBA, right? It better prepares you for this job, which is a lot of budgets, obviously dealing with budgets. You still get to deal with people, risk management, HR, conflict management, that sort of stuff, but you're dealing with a lot of number crunching as well. And that excited me, and I'd like to believe I'm okay at it. So that was the route that I decided to go. And again, it's opened up a lot of doors.
I think a lot of people, when they're playing their 5 years, they got to find a way to get a master's out of it. I think the way that society is going right now, and I'm talking as somebody who dropped out of college a year and a half in, but as a business owner, I think seeing people go get their masters when they're playing, I think it's a huge advantage, and I think they need to take advantage of it, especially if somehow you get injured or you end up redshirting for something.
Absolutely.
If you can double down on your academics and find a way to get a master's out of the deal, I think it's just a huge advantage. So that's very
well, and there's
you pull that off.
Yeah, and there's so few people now, that do go pro, right? So few student athletes at the university, college level, especially, again, CCAA, coming from a CCAA school, where, back in late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to go play professionally. So you need to get that education, because again, there are such few percentile of people that actually go on and play professional basketball and actually can make a pretty good living doing it. I know there's a lot of guys that play professionally and make $700 a month US, but again, that once you get out, you're not saving a lot of that. So I think, again, like you said, I think it's very important. Unless you're RJ Barrett or Zion Williamson and you're making, X amount of millions of dollars per year, eventually you're going to need something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how'd you get into coaching? What drew you to coaching?
Just, again, being around the game. I think that the kind of the pivotal moment for me was my first year out of high school, actually. Tore up my knee pretty good. And so I ended up going back to the high school and that I played at Fulton, and worked with Bob Shannon there at the junior boys level. And I just kind of fell in love with it there again in a different capacity. Once I was kind of recovered and rehabbed, I ended up going and playing for 3 years, but again, just kind of fell in love with it. And then I took a year off in between my second and my third year, started coaching, and I actually ended up being an assistant coach with assistant coach, player, manager, whatever you want to call it, with the college program. And then I coached I think at the time it was a junior high team at the local high school, Sahali in Kamloops. And so it was always around the game of basketball. And then once I kind of got into my, I was done my degree, it just became what I wanted to do for a career. And so I ended up, working as an assistant coach with a lot of variety of different head coaches that were all very high level head coaches: Kevin Hansen, Scott Clark, Ken Olynyk, just to name drop a few. But again, I just was very fortunate with who I worked with. And then again, coaching, especially at this level, so much of it is opportunity, and you have to be, in the right place, right time at the university level. And, you got to be good to be lucky and lucky to be good. And I think that I was very fortunate life-wise, just timing-wise, everything kind of worked out for me, and ended up moving to Calgary and got my first head coaching job at SAIT on the women's side, and then Mount Royal, and was part of their transition into Canada West. And then again, going back to TRU to go back, or to go onto the guys side and finish my master's. And it kind of just spiraled.
Yeah, well, it's worked out. So let's talk about when you got to Douglas, because obviously you had some very good teams, highly rated nationally. What was it like to kind of come in there and put your stamp on the program?
Well, I think it was a team that had some talent. I think it was a team that maybe, again, change happens for a variety of different reasons at the coaching level. And I think it was a time where they just needed a bit of a different infusion of something different. And there was a talent base there. They wanted, a coach to come in and be very passionate. And I think that's one of my stronger points. I think they, it's a tough league. It's every year there's, you have a national finalist or you have a national medalist in that division. And so I think the year one, it was a bit of a learning curve for me, trying to see, okay, what do we need to be to be competitive at, the VIU level versus, I don't want to necessarily finish 4, 5, 6 every year. So we recruited as if we were trying to get to that Saturday night, March 1st against VIU in VIU provincial Pacwest championship game. And again, we ended up again, part of recruiting is getting lucky sometimes. And we just had the right mix of guys, older guys, veteran guys. From a technical perspective, we had a certain, we had certain types of guys that we wanted in our program: real physical, high rebounders, again, and we had that, and the team just bought into what our direction was. And we were obviously the second year, we obviously upset VIU. I think you would consider it an upset. And we ended up going and finishing second in the country. And then the next year lost in the provincial final at the buzzer. And then this year, who knows? Who knows how we would have done?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
But we wanted tough-minded student athletes that were going to be great in the classroom, that were going to, on the floor, they were going to rebound hard, they were going to defend hard. Offensively, we were going to, we were going to fluctuate as we tend to do. We tend to be, the only thing that didn't change year to year was we wanted to go inside out basketball. We didn't want to be a team that was going to bomb away from 3 in the first 3 seconds of the shot clock. And that was kind of our MO, and that was who we were.
Well, sometimes when everyone's doing one thing, if you do the opposite, it ends up working out pretty good.
Well, yeah. We were a tough guard because we were so physical. I think that was the big thing, was we had older guys, we had physically stronger guys in our program. And I think that year, that we finished second in the country, we really surprised a lot of people. Obviously, we kind of came up from out of nowhere, even though we knew we knew in-house we were pretty good and we had a chance to be pretty good. It just, again, the Pacwest is such an interesting league in that, 6 of 7 teams make playoffs. So if you win 2 games that first weekend of league play, which was kind of our mindset, we weren't necessarily worried about regular season results after that. We were really focused on, our principles, our philosophy, and getting as good as we can be at that, so that March 1st, we're ready to be in playoffs, or we're ready to be, moving forward from the semifinal to the final.
Absolutely. Now, talk a little bit about your kind of core coaching philosophy. So what are some of the core principles you guys had on your teams as you progressed? Did you start with something and has it changed? And kind of like, what are they now?
Well, I think philosophically, I mean, again, I want to be firm. I want to be fair, and I want to be honest with the student athletes. I think early in my career, I struggled with and I think a lot of coaches do struggle with this, is you want to be a bit of a people pleaser. And by trying to please everybody, you're not gonna please anybody. So I think that really early in my career, I wanted to be liked versus, again, wanted to coach. And, head coach, you're not going to be liked all the time. And you know what? It took me a while to understand the importance of, just being 100% transparent, and you don't need to sugarcoat, and you just need to go out and be who you are as a coach. And I think once that philosophy in my mind started to change, and maybe I grew more confident as a coach through whatever successes, through education, through knowledge, through experience. I think, you just become more at one with your philosophy. And I think now, again, I'm firm, I'm fair. I like to believe I'm fairly transparent with the student athletes. We have a philosophical belief on the floor that we deem to be successful. That really hasn't changed, to be honest, over the course of, I've always put a strong value on rebounding the basketball. I've always put a strong value on controlling the things that you can control. And that is the effort, that is the defense, that for the most part. The offense, hey, there's going to be nights where you're only going to shoot 22% from three. Right. And on those nights, can you guard? Can you get a stop? Can you get a crucial rebound to keep yourself in the game? And, so again, those things haven't really changed much over the course of my coaching career, but definitely my personal philosophy in terms of how to approach the day-to-day definitely has.
Absolutely. And so when you're looking for players to recruit, obviously talent is important, but what are some of the things that you're looking for? I mean, watching from afar, we've talked briefly, but not really.
Yep.
And so, you have some players from, I don't know where the hell you found them, to be honest with you, but they can play. And so where are you looking for these people, and kind of what are the core philosophies that you kind of like, because these are the type of people I'm trying to get?
Well, I think we as a staff, I don't want to say it's just me in particular, because I think it's definitely a group effort, or at least it has been the last 4 years. I think, and I commend my assistant coaches knowing kind of what I'm looking for and what I like in a player, because again, we're constantly talking about players and how they would fit into our program. As far as what we look for in particular, again, I want to see personally, we're talking to a student athlete right now currently who I think, could be pretty good. Our message to him on the phone is, I want to see tape, but I want to see a good game, not a highlight reel. I want to see a good game. And I also want to see a bad game. Like, what was your, and how do you, and I'm more in tune to watch the bad game in terms of how do you handle adversity, right? If you get punched in the mouth, proverbially, how do you handle that reaction? Do you sulk on the end of the bench, or do you just try to buckle down and play harder? How do you handle getting scored on by a serious guy? As far as, trying to find the talent, I mean, you have your hand in a lot of cookie jars in a lot of different places. You have relationships, you reach out to those. Everybody wants what's best for the student athletes. And I think that's the overarching theme that sometimes we all get lost in, is everybody wants what's best for the athletes. And, they want to see, coaches, scouts, whatever, they want to see student athletes succeed. And so, I mean, we reach out to all of our relationships, and we say, hey, we're looking for this, or this is what we're looking for. This is what we need. We identify the holes within our roster, I think, very well, and kind of address it from that perspective. We have had an eclectic group of guys, at Douglas while we've been there. We've had a guy from Texas. We've had a guy from the Ivory Coast. We've had a guy from California that was highly recruited by a bunch of Division Ones. Again, it's just about relationship building and getting them to believe in your program and your vision.
Absolutely. So the job at UFV comes up. You guys had a very good team this year. Obviously, it got cut short, like literally a week before, and
yeah, still painful.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out what's going to happen there, but you end up applying for this job. What was it like to apply for that university job and then to go get the job?
I think it's one of those things where the U Sport jobs are so few and far between, and full-time coaching jobs in Canada are so few and far between that whenever those job opportunities do come open, I think it's, based on family, based on life, where you're at life-wise. I think it was just a right fit, right time. Again, a little bit of a good to be lucky, lucky to be good, lucky to be in that environment and in that scenario. We came off of a fantastic year, so I knew the iron wasn't going to be much hotter than it was at that stage. And you have to strike when the iron's hot. It's 20 minutes from the house, so it makes sense geographically. It makes sense. Like, I don't have to relocate family. So I think from everything from that perspective, it was just the right place, right time. As far as the process goes, you apply, you hope to get an interview, you go through the interview process, and that is challenging, and it has its ups and downs emotionally, for sure. And then again, was offered the job, and it was a pretty easy decision. It didn't take a lot of time. There was no real negotiation, if you want to call it as such. It was an easy accept. It just made sense logically, logistically, family, everything. So I think it was, again, right place, a little bit of right place, right time, which is, to get to the U Sport level, sometimes you have to have that. And again, it was just fortunate that the admin staff at Fraser Valley thought I interviewed well, and hopefully can build a program to where the Douglas program was at the CCAA level.
Absolutely. And so, they came off actually a pretty decent year, I thought. I thought the coach before he did a pretty good job, to be honest.
Very good job, yeah.
And he had some good players, but a lot of them graduated. So you kind of had an opportunity to bring in a bunch of kids. You brought in a lot of people. What are you? Give me a little rundown of some of the kids you brought in, kind of, what the philosophy is on bringing in so many kids.
Yeah, I mean, again, you want to make it yours, and this isn't a normal year in terms of entering a U Sport program by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's quite challenging because you're looking at it from a perspective of, or at least with the way we are, there may not be a season this year. So everybody may have a bit of a redshirt season. So, really what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring in size, and we did that obviously with the Clem brothers from GW Graham and then Aiden Wilson from Burnaby South. But we wanted size that could be developed. We wanted size that weren't necessarily finished products. So, Clem's have 5 years, maybe 6 now. The Wilson has 4/5 years, maybe. And so we wanted to kind of build that way. We like our length. So obviously we got some length to us with Cam Morris coming over from Douglas as well. We have some harder dudes in Gio Khan, who's, was one of our better defenders last year and played a very intricate role, or integral role, I should say, on a team that was very senior laden. Our surprise from Toronto or from Oshawa is going to be very good, and I think he's again a very good on the ball defender. So we wanted a little bit of everything, and then again, the Fraser Valley guys that are returning. I mean, we want to provide them opportunities as well. But the biggest thing is you are recruiting in an unknown time, and you might be recruiting now for 2 years, right, before your roster even gets on the floor. So again, it's a scenario where, again, Canada West comes out with a a COVID message, U Sport comes out, and you just don't know when things are going to fall into place and when you're actually going to play a regular season. So we wanted to bring in our guys, if that makes sense. But we also wanted to bring in a little bit of foreshadowing future guys that we think are going to be pretty good in year 3, 4, 5. If it is indeed an exhibition season this year, perfect, because again, our young big guys are going to get thrown out to the wolves and they're going to have to play a lot of minutes and try to figure it out. But also in an environment where it's not, there's no national championship, or there might not be, there's no potential championship. I mean, games are, it's going to be, everybody's going to be in a little bit of an exhibition mindset.
Yeah, and you know what? And for you, it's actually, I think, a good time because you get to kind of see what you have and see what the cupboard's like, and kind of go from there.
It's been sorry to cut you off there. It's interesting though. Like, I agree with that, definitely on paper. The one thing that I struggle with and I go back and forth with is Canada West is a whole different can of worms than Pacwest in terms of travel, in terms of you're on the road every second weekend, and you're on the road is not, hey, Douglas to Langara, it's, Fraser Valley to University of Manitoba. And so I wanted to be kind of thrown out to the wolves early too, so that I could really see going into year 2 what we needed. Now it's probably going to be going into year 3 where it's like, okay, now we can kind of have a basis. So it's great I can kind of dip my toe in the water and see, but I'd rather just dive in, to be honest.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I mean, I think that's all of us, to be honest. It's funny because as a province, we've done a really good job of dealing with this.
Absolutely.
Thing, but our reward for that is we have stricter rules than everybody else in the world. It's like,
yeah,
do we get to go back at some point? When do we get to actually have a practice? Can I actually go back to basketball? And I think one thing that hasn't been thought of is the mental health of these athletes.
Oh, absolutely.
You got athletes who their life has been training. It's been putting in time. It's been scrimmaging. It's been practicing. It's been getting somebody to work them out. It's been going to the gym and creating a routine for themselves, because it's the things that you keep talking about. Hey, if you want to be a player, you got to create a routine. Hey, if you want to be a player, you got to get in the gym. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, I want to be a player, but I can't do any of the things my coach told me to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think anybody's really, maybe people are thinking about it, but the people in leadership positions in our province haven't done anything about it. And it's an interesting scenario, because it's like, listen, at some point we have to go back to the light, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I definitely know doing this for much longer, I'm pretty sure that's not the right answer either. So
I think it's a scenario where it's unprecedented times. I mean, it really truly is. And I think everybody's trying to dog paddle their way through this and see what is the best way to do it without having another flare up, without, impacting health and wellness of human lives. And I mean, again, it's a great point that you touched on in terms of the mental health of the student athletes. I think it's a scenario where, we are definitely at the university level, we're very in tune with that. And we're very aware of, they haven't had a regular quote unquote training session in 5 months. Is it 5 months now? Maybe almost borderline 6. So I think it's a scenario where the return to play is going to be a long process as well, to get these finely tuned athletes back to where they were physically as well, not just emotionally, mentally. But again, for us, mentally, emotionally, I mean, we have our sports, our mental performance person who's reaching out to student athletes. We have, again, we still have meetings. We have Zoom meetings quite a bit. Again, it's the one positive thing for me entering a program in this time frame is, before it was just plug coach into the gym, let him get to know his student athletes on the floor. And now it's okay. Now we're trying to be a little bit more creative in terms of how we're getting to know these guys. And now it's, Zoom calls. Okay, hey, talking a little bit more about goals, about the mental side of the game versus the actual physical, right? So again, from that perspective, you're getting to know them, coming in a new coach and new program, you're getting to know them as the whole student athlete versus just the basketball side of it.
Absolutely. And it's demanding a lot of leadership from people, and
Absolutely.
hopefully we get to see some good leadership. Now, talking about leadership, who's probably the best leader you've been around, and why?
I've been very, very fortunate that I've been around some very good leaders. I think from a head coaching perspective and from a mentorship perspective, I think everybody brings a little something different to the table. And I've kind of learned and picked up pieces that I liked and I didn't like from everybody. I think as overall, in terms of overall encompassing, in terms of putting life into perspective, putting basketball into perspective, just being a mentor as a human being, I would definitely say Ken Olenek. I think, for a guy who's coached national team, who's coached at the U Sport level, who has a son in the NBA, a daughter who played very high level at U of S, and then Jesse. I mean, again, just so many different life lessons I've learned from him across the way, and been very fortunate to be kind of his right-hand man at Thompson Rivers for a year. So obviously I saw the coaching perspective of it. I saw the admin perspective of it from an athletic director's perspective. And so I think overall, in terms of holistic approach, definitely Ken. I think, basketball wise, everybody's going to have their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, Kevin can recruit, Kevin can coach, Kevin can do a lot of different things really, really well. Scott is, technically one of the best coaches I've ever seen, so they all bring different little aspects where you take a piece here, a piece there, and hopefully just try to make it your own.
Absolutely. I'm actually interviewing Ken on Tuesday, so I'm very excited to hear his thoughts on a bunch of different things. He's had a fantastic career. That's done a lot of stuff. And it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on that stuff. Now, when you were starting to coach, who were some of the people you kind of looked up to and wanted to tailor your coaching style after?
It's funny because again, I was very much, against at the time we didn't necessarily have the access to social media and so again, you're watching Duke play, but it's Duke on a Saturday on CBS. It's not necessarily, you can't watch Southwest Missouri State or Virginia or anything like that. So I think I really looked up to the people that were in the near, like Kevin Hansen. I can remember, kind of idolizing him to a certain point in the CCAA room or rule. And part of that was, his success ratio without even really knowing him. And I think, you always really look up to and try to emulate your head coach. So the coach that first gave me my opportunity was Nevin Gleddy, a long time ago now. But again, you look up to him, you learn from him. Again, as I've got older in my coaching world, and again, the internet and social media and all that, you now have essentially all access pass to pretty much everything. I think now you just look at, I really truly would love to emulate what Tony Bennett does at Virginia. I think that's a guy who really encompasses obviously he the life perspective of basketball. And last year we really took it one step further, and we really wanted to emulate that whole painful gift mindset with our program, and we definitely looked at going off on a bit of a rant here, but we really looked at their loss to Missouri Kansas City in the first round as the first ever 116, and his interview after, where he did say it was a painful gift to them. And so then what happened is we used that VIU last second loss in the provincial final. That was our painful gift last year. And so while it was a lot of short-term pain, this year was long-term gain. And that's how we viewed it. And so that's where, again, the life lessons, come into play. And it's not just about the results at the here and now.
And listen, it'll play itself out as long as you keep taking care of the little steps. It's all going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about UFV as an actual job. It's right in the heart of basketball in our province. You're close to a lot of players that can play It doesn't have the history at the CIS level that it does at the, obviously it was one of the better college programs in the country for quite a while. But what's it like going into a place and kind of trying to make it your own and kind of trying to build a history there?
Well, I think it's whenever you enter a program that's had a lot of success, I think what you try to do is you want to come into it and you want to try and better it in your way. I mean, they had, I'm looking back at records, and they had an unbelievable run in the CCAA, and they've had a very unheralded run at the U Sport level. I mean, they're a little bit again, they're a little bit non-visible because it's in Abbotsford. It's very visible in the Langley, Abbotsford Mission area, but it's not necessarily out here in West Van, North Van, Vancouver as a whole. And so what we're trying to do right now is we're just trying to raise visibility of the program and celebrate the successes of the past and, raise alumni interest. And I think that's really been a focus, going into it. Again, the results on the floor, once we kind of get into the day-to-day, we'll know exactly what we need. We'll address those needs. I think in terms of moving the program to that next level, it'll be raising visibility of it, because I think it has been a pretty unheralded program. Like you look at, thinking back to the CCAA years, when you think of winning programs, who do you think of? You think automatically of Langara, and you think of, really, you probably think of VIU during this last time frame, but you don't think of Fraser Valley winning 3 national championships in 5 years, right? And so part of that is just the location of it. So again, that's the raising visibility of the program.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see it continue, and I wish you the best. Hopefully I get to watch some of your games this year, and you can have some games
hopefully
at some point.
Hopefully we get to coach some games and play in some games this year. So
awesome. Well, best of luck. Stay in touch, and thank you very much for joining us today. I think it was some good tidbits for people to watch.
Awesome.